Hi, my name is Nicole Rodden-Bowen, and I am the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Benton Harbor. And today we will be presenting the Introduction to the Community Development Block Grant Program. This presentation was put together for our citizens of Benton Harbor, and as we begin our 2014-2015 program year annual action plan process. Today's presentation will include the purpose, history, and regulations of CDBG, how CDBG funds are allocated federally and locally, CDBG national objectives, eligible activities and examples, and ineligible activities and examples, as well as the 2014-2015 Benton Harbor allocation. The purpose of CDBG is to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing and a suitable living environment, and by expanding economic opportunities, principally for persons of low and moderate income. To find out more about community development block grants and their history, you can visit information on the Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. And for more applicable laws and regulations, you can also visit the Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR, Title 24, and CDBG policy guidance from HUD. So, for the allocation process of CDBG, funds are allocated to entitlement grantees by dual formulas based on the following: population, poverty, overcrowded housing, aged housing, and population growth lag. The City of Benton Harbor is currently an entitlement grantee, which means we receive our funds directly from HUD based on this calculation. For the CDBG planning process, every 5 years, we put together our consolidated plan that addresses housing, social services, infrastructure, community revitalization needs, and specifies the types of projects we plan to fund, and it also serves as a basis for assessing performance. We are coming to the end of our current 5-year consolidated plan, which began in 2011. Right now, we're preparing for our annual action plan. So every year, we prepare a report for HUD that discusses how resources will be utilized for the upcoming program year. This action plan is always due 45 days prior to the program year start. For the City of Benton Harbor, that's April 1. We also have the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, also known as CAPER. The CAPER report is due 90 days after each program year ends, and this report describes progress from previous program years, reports on and reviews the City's use of our entitlement funds, and it allows for the City to complete a self-assessment of how we use those funds. Now we'll talk about the CDBG national objectives. There are 3 national objectives that are met using CDBG funds. The first is low moderate income benefits. This is for benefits low and moderate income persons, including through low moderate income housing, low moderate income jobs, a limited clientele, and area benefit, which we'll talk more about in future slides. There's also slums and blight that aids in the prevention or elimination of slums and blight on either a spot basis or area basis, and we'll also talk more about that in future slides. Then there's urgent need. To meet urgent community development needs that the unit of local government is not able to fund either on its own or through other sources, and it must pose an immediate threat to safety and public welfare, and we'll get into that as well. Here you'll see the national objectives mapped out for you to easily explain the setup under our national objectives. So under the low moderate income persons, this means families at 80% or less of the area median income. The overall benefit to LMI persons must be at least 70%, and that can be achieved through the area benefit, clientele, and jobs. However, when you're trying to meet the LMI through housing, the law requires that the overall benefit for persons shall be 100%. So any person in Berrien County and Benton Harbor who is applying for CDBG funds or who benefits from CDBG funds must meet this 80% AMI. And for Berrien County, the 2013 HUD income limits. For a family of 4, you can make no more than $44,250. So when we talk about LMA, we talk about projects that will benefit a geographic area, so target area or citywide area. This can include park benefits, where we know that park is used by at least 70% of low-mod income persons. We've done park improvements in the past, and we can show that majority of the people who will benefit from those park improvements fall into that category. When we talk about LMI persons to receive an actual benefit, so the clientele, we're talking about places such as health centers, senior centers, where 70% of the recipients of the benefit are LMI income persons. So this limited clientele can include abused children, battered spouses, elderly persons, severely disabled, homeless, and illiterate adults. For LMH, this will be providing or improving permanent residential structures, which upon completion will be occupied by LMI households. And again, that 70% does not come into play with housing. If we're going to use LMH in order to reach our LMI national objective, 100% of those households must benefit from the CDBG funds. Then we look at LMJ for economic development projects. This can include loans to help finance the expansion of a plant or factory, assistance to prevent closure and resultant of loss of jobs for LMI persons, and construction of a business incubator, which is designed for both space and assistance to new small businesses to help them survive and grow. And 51% of the jobs must be held or made available to low-mod income persons. The next national objective is the removal of slum and blight. And again, there's 2 points under there, area basis and spot basis. Area basis means that the area that's targeted, at least 25% of the properties, must meet the abandonment of properties, there must be physical deterioration of buildings or improvements, and significant decline of property values, and of course others listed on the slide. For example, the city of Benton Harbor has used code enforcement as a way to attack the removal of slum and blight on an area basis. Then there's a spot basis. That's just an elimination of specific conditions of blight. That can be a demolition of a building that is bringing down property values on a block. Then there's the national objective of urgent need. Urgent need means an immediate threat or danger to health or welfare. That would include natural disasters such as floods or hurricanes. So here listed are some eligible CDBG activities. Again, code enforcement, homeownership assistance, historic preservation, rehab, public services, and public improvements in facilities. Under public services, this includes abused children, battered spouses, elderly persons, persons living with AIDS, and these are just examples. For public facilities, this can include removing barriers to disabled persons, acquisition of land or buildings, construction of new streets, construction or renovation of community centers, construction or renovation of parks and recreation facilities, new sidewalks, renovation of historic properties. So some examples nationally of how CDBG funds have been used for projects included new benches at a local park, curb cuts that provide accessibility of sidewalks for persons with disabilities, new sidewalks to provide safe paths for children. Ineligible activities includes buildings used for general conduct of government, city hall, government centers, political activities, acquisition of furnishings, just to name a few. Now we'll talk about our 2014-2015 allocation. No more than 20% of the grant may be used for planning and administrative cost, and no more than 15% of the grant can be used for public service activities. Also, right now, the city is required to pay back each year part of its defaulted Section 108 loans until the year 2022. So using the allocation from the 2013-2014 year, we have an estimate of what our allocation will be for next year. And you can see that 20% outlined for admin, then the project funds available, the 15% max available for public service projects, and the amount scheduled to pay our Section 108 loan repayment for next year. So as we prepare for our annual action plan process for 2014-2015, some things that we think about is how much of the identified need will be eliminated. Currently look at our project, when you go back to look at the funds allocated, how much do we really have available? Well, we have about $230,000 that are actually available for projects and public service projects total. So how can we use that funding to make a bigger impact? How many people are benefiting? So are we benefiting by putting in a new street or by improving a local park? Is the cost per person reasonable? If we do rehab of housing, how many homes can we realistically rehab by creating a benefit in our community? What is the extent of the benefit to LMI income persons? And have we improved the quality of life in Benton Harbor? So as a summary, we have seen a decline in CDBG funding over the past 10 years in Benton Harbor. However, with CDBG, we have the flexibility to use our funds to make a greater impact locally. And this presentation was set up to improve citizen understanding of CDBG funds and also to increase participation in the CDBG local allocation process because both are extremely important. So what's next? Our first public hearing for our annual action plan process will be on December 19th at 5 p.m. This hearing will allow citizens to give feedback on how they would like to spend local CDBG dollars. At that time, we'll begin our 30-day public comment period, and draft copies of the annual plan will be available at the Community Development Office and the Public Library for review. The 30-day public comment period ends on January 20, 2014. There will be comment sheets available also at the Public Library and Community Development Office, and they can be dropped off at the Community Development Office. The second public hearing is scheduled for January 22nd at 5:30 p.m. At the Planning and Economic Committee meeting, the final recommendation will be presented to the City Commission and City Manager for approval on February 3rd, 2014. And then our annual action plan is estimated to be submitted to HUD by February 7th, 2014. For any questions, you can contact the Community and Economic Development Department at 269-927-8420.